Hi everyone, welcome back to the Fatherly Edition with Tommaso Maggio. This week is a quick recap about how some of the fathers talk about their own dad and mom, their old generation, and what they learn from them. Thank you for listening. See you soon.
Career, which I'm truly thankful for.
Yes, and you mentioned when you say compared to your mother, right? So you want to bring something, or what do you bring up to that you learn from your mother? You bring to the table.
Wow, my mother did. What I'm doing is quite unique, but some 30, 40 years ago, my mother was doing exactly this. And more actually. So it's not like I feel like I should pat myself on the back. This is just what you do as a parent, and some of the, I'm fortunate enough that I'm close to my mother that, and she doesn't live too far away, that we can go, Jack and I can go and visit her, and we can talk about, we can share some of the sort of parenting stories, but also, what I did when I was a youngster, and how Jack approaches life, and we can compare notes, if you like, on parenting. Quite often Jack and I will head up to Suffolk for the weekend and see Mum and have lunch. And she's a great grandmother, and she's still very hands-on with Jack. And she will give me a few pointers from time to time. Sometimes I can be a little bit hard on him, and maybe that's what's come from corporate life as well, is that the trying to get deals done, or trying to negotiate and those sorts of things. And so she also helps me bring some of the softer side to parenting towards Jack, which is good too.
Add another point there, Tommaso, if you wouldn't mind. In terms of one of the earlier questions you had about how the parenting or fatherhood had changed, right? Our parents' generation were people who learned parenting from their parents.
Exactly.
Right. It was the grandparents or the great-grandparents who lived long, and then probably lived in the same household, community, that supported each other. So from day one, it will be the grandparents who support the mom in terms of all the requirements, teaching the mother and the father what needs to be done. This, I think, is also a change in our generation, or our current generations, is where we learn things by ourselves mostly. There are plenty of information available on the internet about parenting. There are feedback from reviews and lessons by actual moms and dads on their websites, mobile applications that we used. And also some of the books we got as gifts when we became parents came in very handy when you take things like feeding. When you first try to feed children solid foods, there are plenty of ways now to come up with nice recipes that you can come up with innovative ways to feed children. So these were different back in the day. So those all learnings came from the grandparents, whereas we are a generation who learn by ourselves. And even now, Tommaso, if you agree or disagree with me, if one of our kids falls sick or have some symptom, first thing we would do is Google it and see what kind of thing this is, what are the reviews, feedback about these, get an idea, and then we go to the doctor and then see, without blindly going to a doctor and understanding what a doctor tells us. We have some sort of knowledge when we go to a doctor. So these, I think, are far different changes in the parenting, and to add to the other questions as well.
It's a great question, and and it's a question that links both to generational issues and changes, but also to my father in particular, and I think his father's generation. My dad didn't grow up with a father who was present. He was home. I mean, he grew up with a father, but his father, like my father, was hardworking and out of the house pretty much all of the time, other than evenings and some weekends. I don't think that my grandmother, my father's mother, was particularly affectionate, and neither was my grandfather relative to my father. So I don't think that my father had a frame of reference that allowed for him outside of the workplace to maybe access emotional sides that for a father and for children are necessary. So there are these elements that are generational because maybe that wasn't seen by my grandfather or my father as being something that was particularly important, but also there are elements that are specific to families and how people grow up. But specific to generation, my dad, I think, both by way of his peers and his role models, didn't and wasn't going to see himself as a full-time father. He also was the breadwinner, and I think that in my family growing up, it was clear early on that my dad was going to have more opportunities to make more money faster than my mother would have. At the same time, I feel like people often use generational distinctions as an excuse for having allowed themselves to not be particularly present. It's easy to say, well, these were my role models, this was society at the time, and so I wasn't there. Because we even know now, Tommaso, as fathers, and things haven't changed that much, that if we wanted to, we could say, well, I've got professional responsibilities that would take me away from doing this. So things have changed, but I think part of it is also the mindset of the individual, and that is generational, but it also is personal, as is personal that how we grow up and therefore how we interact. So in some, I don't think that there's an easy answer to this. I think that it's layered and nuances.
And it was very huge, actually, country. I was 14 years old when all this ugly situation started in our big country, right? Yugoslavia was a federation of 6 republics. And I remember that in that time, the fatherhood was practically something that carried out more like patriarchate, carried out the family, and the main role was to carry out, to bring it, to provide. I mean, that is how the society was set up. And there was also something that was called the Tito law. Sorry, I have to mention this, but this is very interesting and intriguing, because he said you have to work 8 hours in a day, 8 hours to rest, and 8 hours to sleep. And that was a concept that everyone was implementing. So the working day was starting at 7 o'clock. So I was seeing my parents only after the lunch, couple more hours. Then they would do something and arrange. I mean, everyone who is a parent knows what kind of responsibility it carries, but also society is something that brings a new situation in the struggles that you have to be dealing with, right? So all of a sudden, from some kind of socialistic movement, we passed to a democracy and liberal capitalism, and then the struggle and striving for life and chasing for job was very difficult for everyone. So it happened, the transitional process, and I must say that all the depression and all the sensations that we felt from that moment, and I was a young teenager, was really very complicated. And I could see in my father's eyes, you know, that he lost his job. He couldn't work anymore where he worked, you know. So all of a sudden you entered in from one position that you are provided well, right, to a position that you really have to help or erase your feelings and feel the new coming time. So maybe this reflected me a lot when I was starting my family, because I'm feeling all of this on your back, right? The possibility to sense the life that generally can be brutal in one moment. I tried not to impose a similar situation to my kids, even though we were vastly capitalistic, and I working in Poland in a marketing agency, that then coming here, you know, you understand the concept that you have to work. There is no 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and then 8 hours of sleep, right? So
Hi, thanks for listening the Fatherly Edition. If you like what I've been hearing, please follow Tommaso Maggio on LinkedIn or subscribe to the Fatherly Edition podcast on Spotify, Apple, or whatever you gain your podcast.